She didn't post a goodbye. Not even a blurry airport story. Julia just disappeared. No Brandon, no Virginia, no hint. One day, she was in the US, and the next, she was posting from a quiet backyard in Serbia, surrounded by family, none of whom we've seen in her feed for years. No misuse, no couple pics, no recharging with loved ones tags, just a smiling face, home-cooked food, and a stillness that hit harder than any breakup post ever could. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't reality TV drama. This felt surgical, precise, like she planned it, packed her truth in silence, and walked away before anyone could ask questions. And the silence itself? That was the message. Welcome to TLC Drama Files. I'm Aliva, and right now we're peeling back the final layer of Julia Trubkina's disappearing act because what looked like a quiet vacation home turned out to be an emotional emergency exit. So subscribe if you're new here, and drop your theory in the comments. Was this heartbreak, healing, or a hidden truth exploding in slow motion? The first signs weren't loud. They were subtle. Fewer reels, more still images. No Brandon in the background, not even a dog paw near her feet. Then her captions got vague. Taking time for myself. Back to reality soon. Silence is peace. But if you follow Julia long enough, you know she doesn't post like that unless something seriously shattered underneath the surface. And then fans noticed the pattern. No tags, no cross posts, nothing reshared from Brandon's account. This wasn't a glitch. This was a ghosting in real time. And it wasn't just Brandon. TLC accounts stopped spotlighting her too. The franchise's golden immigrant couple, the fiery Russian dancer, and the awkward farm boy, gone cold without explanation. That's when the speculation exploded. Breakup? Breakdown? Burnout? But here's what most people missed. Julia didn't disappear during chaos. She stayed through chaos, through infertility scares, in-law battles, and televised therapy. She didn't slam the door when things got bad. She waited until the moment everything looked fine, and that's when she walked. Because real endings don't come with final episodes. They come with no episode, no script, no closure, just absence. And that's what makes this even more painful. Brandon wasn't left. He was just omitted. And once you hear how Simba died, you'll understand why silence was safer than staying. But for now, we're still at the entrance. The exit only makes sense once you see all the cracks Julia hid behind couple captions and TLC contracts. Because this wasn't about love falling apart. This was about the moment she realized it wasn't love holding her there in the first place. She didn't leave when everything broke. She left after. After the grief, after the silence, after the last thing she counted on, completely failed her. So what pushed Julia from soft captions to full disappearance? What finally convinced her that standing by Brandon cost her more than walking away ever could? To the cameras, Simba was just the family dog. Cute, well-fed, always in matching outfits with Julia. But behind those perfectly filtered posts, Simba was more than fur and tail wags. He was Julia's lifeline. Her son, self-proclaimed. The one soul that let her embody the kind of motherhood she'd quietly accepted she'd never get to experience in the traditional way. Because here's the part TLC never centered. Julia didn't just face infertility. She faced it alone, in a house that felt borrowed, in a language that wasn't hers, with doctors who gave her clinical answers and a husband who gave her business logic. No baby announcements, no pregnancy suspense, just a flat medical verdict. You probably won't ever. And while Brandon moved on from that moment with his usual shrug and checklist attitude, Julia internalized it like an identity collapse. She didn't get the luxury of trying again. She got the cold stares, the misunderstood grief, the DMs from strangers saying, "You'll get your miracle." But she didn't want miracles anymore. She wanted acknowledgement. Instead, she found Simba. He was the one thing she could nurture without fear of failure. She brushed his fur like a bedtime routine. She watched him breathe like a mother watches her newborn dream. She spoke to him in Russian, fed him like a child, carried him when he was tired. And when Simba looked up at her, it didn't matter that she couldn't carry a baby, because she was, in every visible and invisible way, his mom. But when Simba got sick, the cracks in her world weren't physical. They were emotional. Brandon wasn't cruel. That's the trap. He didn't insult her pain. He organized it. He Googled treatments, suggested costs, asked about sedatives and options. He skipped the part where you hold your wife while she sobs on the floor. He fast-forwarded to "what should we do?" like they were picking a vendor, not watching her only child fade in front of them. Julia wanted seconds to stretch, time to feel, but Brandon gave her minutes to act. Efficiency replaced empathy, and where soft arms should have been, she got spreadsheets. Where comfort was expected, she got confusion. And the deeper Simba sank, the more isolated she became. No one praised her grief. No one validated the hollow ache that comes from losing the only thing that ever chose you back, without conditions. She wasn't allowed to mourn like a parent. She was told to move on like a woman who still has time. Wait until you hear the gift Brandon gave Julia after Simba died. You'll never see that massage chair the same way again. And she tried. She smiled at the kind comments, thanked Brandon for the support, sat in the chair once, took a photo, got up, lay down on the hard floor beside Simba's empty bed, and closed her eyes. That picture wasn't a thank you. It was a performance. And something in her eyes said, he doesn't get it, and maybe never will. Julia didn't lose a pet. She lost the one bond that didn't require compromise, didn't shrink her, didn't judge her accent or her emotions. And with that loss came a second one, quieter but sharper. She didn't just lose her son. She lost the mirror that made her feel human. So where was Brandon while she was breaking slowly, completely, and in plain sight? That answer is coming. But you might not like it. It started in a sterile doctor's office, cold and echoey. Julia sat still as the words dropped heavy. Pregnancy might never happen. No soft suggestion, no hopeful percentages, just medical probability delivered without ceremony. To her, that room stopped time. To Brandon, it triggered a plan. He didn't squeeze her hand. He didn't hold space. He said, "Let's get a second opinion." And that was the moment something cracked. Not because he was insensitive, but because even in her rawest breaking point, he treated grief like a puzzle to solve instead of a wound to sit with. That silent emotional mismatch didn't explode. It built slowly, stacking itself into everyday rejection. One skipped hug at a vulnerable moment. One too casual joke about being too dramatic. One more time she reached out emotionally and got redirected with a technical fix. Julia didn't expect Brandon to carry her pain. She expected him to care. And every time she reached for softness, he handed her logic. That gap grew fast. At first, Julia thought she was just missing home, missing language, missing community. She blamed her tears on hormones, her outbursts on stress. But what she was experiencing wasn't mood swings. It was grief with no mirror. And the more she tried to replicate family in America, the more resistance she met. Brandon didn't scream. He didn't control with fists or threats. He controlled gently, with feedback, or with delays, with postponements wrapped in calm tones. When she asked to bring her parents to visit, he wasn't sure about the timing. When she asked again, he said, "It's too much for the house right now." When she insisted, he got quiet. So Julia stopped asking. Instead, she opened her laptop and filled out the visa papers herself, submitting them quietly, without Brandon's help, without his permission. When he found out, everything came loose. He didn't yell. He used a different weapon, disappointment, accused her of betrayal, said she went behind his back, acted like sneaking a federal application past your own husband was an act of war. But for Julia, it wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Because when asking always leads to no, you stop asking. What looked like rebellion was actually desperation. She needed her parents' arms. Not because she didn't love Brandon, but because she no longer trusted the way his love showed up. Not emotionally, not consistently, not when it counted. And when Simba's health began deteriorating, that gap turned cavernous. She wanted support. Emotional triage. Brandon offered efficiency, alternatives, plans, but no warmth. And again, Julia found herself alone inside a silent storm. She begged that dog to wait for her. What happened next changed everything. Behind those Instagram smiles, her entire being was unraveling. TLC positioned it like quirky marriage friction. Julia's independence versus Brandon's preference for structure. But no one explained how fast emotional abandonment turns into identity erosion. One no at a time, Julia felt herself shrinking. She washed the dishes with earbuds in, spoke softer, asked less, slept longer. Not out of laziness, but in quiet protest. The moment her parents' visa became a battlefield, something clicked. She wasn't being supported. She was being managed. And to outsiders, it all looked stable. Because emotional erosion doesn't show up in the highlight reel. It happens in the no's that sound polite, the silences that feel calculated, the smiles that come with no follow-up concern. By the time Simba got sick, Julia wasn't just mourning a potential loss. She was mourning all the parts of herself she gave up trying to be the kind of wife Brandon knew how to love. TLC edited it like a funny farm drama. But fans missed the truth hiding behind matching sweatshirts. What came next wasn't a breaking point. It was a detachment too quiet to notice, until her child stopped breathing and she wasn't even in the room. Because then, Simba died. Julia almost didn't take that trip. Simba had been getting weaker, sleeping more, eating less, barely able to stand without help. She felt it in her chest, the pull to stay. But she looked at Brandon for guidance. He didn't say, "Don't go." He said, "It's your call." Not concern, not objection, just passive neutrality dressed as support. So she packed, kissed Simba's head, whispered, "Wait for me, okay?" The way you whisper when your heart already knows the answer, but refuses to accept it. She was gone for less than 48 hours. Day 1, she sent Brandon a message. "How's Simba?" No reply. A few hours later, "Update, please?" Still nothing. She told herself he was busy, maybe out walking Nayla. Maybe Simba was having a good day. Maybe quiet meant stability. Day 2 came with turbulence, not just in the sky, but the kind you feel in your chest when nothing's wrong, but nothing sits right. Then the call came. Not a video, not a warning. Brandon's voice, flat and final. He's gone. No build-up, no pause to soften the blow, no voice crack, no, "I tried." Just, he's gone. And like that, everything inside her dropped. She didn't scream. She didn't hang up. She didn't sob in the hotel hallway or throw her phone. She just stared at the wall, breathing like a person trying to survive sudden underwater pressure. A heartbeat so slow, it borders on stillness. Her next post came hours later. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't long. It was a simple photo of Simba with 5 haunting words. "Thank you for choosing me." No black and white filter, no tribute video, no poetic caption, just restraint. Like grief tied down with rope. Clean, minimal, devastating. Then the questions poured in. Why weren't you there? Did you know he was getting worse? Did Brandon even tell you how bad it was? Julia replied to none of them. She didn't need to. Because what hurt wasn't just Simba dying. It was how it happened. And what never happened. He died. And she wasn't called when he started slipping. Wasn't asked if she wanted to say goodbye. Wasn't given a chance to see his eyes one last time. No FaceTime, no warning. Brandon made that call alone. And if you're thinking, maybe he just didn't know what to say, wait until you hear what he posted next. By the time she got home, it was like Simba had never been there. His food bowls were washed, his bed was folded, his toys packed into a cabinet, his fur vacuumed from the couch. Everything clean, erased, sanitized, grief treated like mess. But not her mess, his inconvenience. And the moment that broke whatever was left of her trust, wasn't loud. It was cold. Brandon, proud of how he'd handled everything, surprised her with a gift. A massage recliner. That was it. That was the big gesture. Not her being held, not her being asked what she needed. Not a scrapbook of Simba's photos, or a candle or a letter. A vibrating chair. He filmed her trying it. She smiled, said, "Thank you." And the internet said, "Oh, he's helping her heal." But look again. She sat in that chair for 20 seconds. Then she stood up, walked to Simba's empty bed on the floor, and lay down beside it without saying a word. The chair was comfort without presence. Performance without emotion. It looked good on Instagram. And it felt hideously empty in her bones. People grieve differently, yes. But Julia didn't just feel alone. She felt erased. Her son disappeared while she was gone. And Brandon made the house look like he never existed to begin with. Julia didn't cry on camera. She didn't post a rant. She didn't even tag Brandon. She did something colder than that. And fans still haven't figured out what that first caption really meant. Because it wasn't a tribute. It was an obituary for everything she stopped believing in that day, including her marriage. When the therapy scenes aired, fans exhaled like everything had finally turned a corner. There sat Brandon and Julia on that couch, knees close, hands brushing arms, like maybe, just maybe, the hard part had passed. The music was soft. The tone was hopeful. And Brandon said all the right things. "We're growing again. I'm listening now. I want to show up better." But something didn't sit right. At least not with longtime watchers. Julia was smiling, technically. Her mouth did the shape. Her tone was gentle. She nodded at Brandon's words, laughed in places fans were supposed to laugh. But her eyes were somewhere else. You know that look when someone's smiling through you instead of at you? That was Julia. Present in posture, absent in spirit. You could almost hear the show's editors trying to push reconciliation like a wedding montage in reverse. But healing isn't a look, and it can't be scripted. What fans didn't realize is that Julia wasn't healing. She was rehearsing because she knew the show needed resolution. And Brandon? He wasn't manipulating. He was performing the version of growth the internet applauds. Measured tone, calm voice, reflective sound bites. But when a relationship becomes a performance of progress instead of progress itself, that's when the real stuff starts leaking through the cracks. As the episodes aired, Julia's Instagram stayed quiet. She didn't quote therapy buzzwords or upload behind-the-scenes banter. She didn't even repost the sweet clips where Brandon praised her. She posted sparse, cryptic captions that made casual followers shake their heads and superfans whisper, "Something's not right." One pic. Her back turned to the camera, porch light pouring in from the corner. Caption, "I allow myself to stop trying." Another post. Her feet next to Simba's old leash, wrapped around her wrists like a bracelet. Caption, "He was all I had left." No tags, no emojis, no hint of Brandon's presence. And it wasn't a one-off. It became her new pattern. Tone down the color, shrink the text, fade into metaphor. Julia wasn't cold. She was in emotional hiding. Some chalked it up to burnout. Others blamed TLC contract rules. But if you read closely, the message was pulsing between the lines. This wasn't social media silence. It was protective silence. This wasn't a mental health crisis. This was years of being slowly erased. And the more Brandon posted calm house updates, porch photos, Nala in the yard, a sunny field, the more obvious it was. His timeline was free of grief, free of rawness, free of her. He acted like nothing had changed. Julia acted like everything had shattered. The comment section knew. "Are you two okay? Where's Brandon? You're glowing, but also, are you alone?" At first, Julia ignored it. Then she started liking the comments she used to delete. One comment said, "This doesn't look like healing. This looks like goodbye." She pinned it. No explanation, no denial, just silence. And while fans zoomed in on backgrounds and time zones, the real clue was staring them in the face. Julia wasn't updating her life. She was warning about it, slowly, subtly, cryptically. Brandon still spoke in clean captions. So grateful for this woman. Working hard, growing together. But even his compliments started to feel performative, like someone posting for credit, while the other person already left the chat. She started sleeping later, posting less, showing up like a guest on her own feed. And the final red flags? They weren't dramatic, they were consistent. No anniversary post, no birthday message for Brandon, no mention of Simba's memory in family updates. One day, she replied to a fan who sent condolences about Simba. Julia wrote, "Thank you. He saved me when no one else knew how. Not we, not our boy, not a shared story. It was hers, alone." And while Brandon posted reels about their dog treat startup, Julia was nowhere in sight. The brand logo changed. Her captions didn't bother tagging him anymore. Then the subtle setup paid off. Julia vanished again. No announcement, no collab posts, no goodbye pic. She started uploading short reels from Eastern Europe, Serbia specifically. The captions? Softer, slightly lighter, but no Brandon. Not a frame, not a tag, not a mention. And that wasn't a mistake. It was the confirmation fans weren't ready to accept. Because it turns out, while the internet was watching Brandon talk about effort, Julia was already slipping out the side door, tiptoeing her way toward freedom. And the one detail that confirmed it all was in plain sight. You saw it. You just didn't know how to read it yet. But now, you'll never look at that "thank you for choosing me" caption the same way again. Right after The Last Resort aired, Julia's feed took a hard turn. No more couple therapy reposts. No more behind-the-scenes selfies. It was all dogs, logos, and launch mode. Kingdom for Dogs, the pet subscription brand she'd quietly been building, suddenly exploded. Within days, dog moms, influencers, even low-level celebs started re-sharing her promo boxes. Fans flooded her DMs. Orders sold out in hours. Everyone thought this was her big win, her bounce-back moment, a woman rising from rural farm life to full CEO status. But the truth behind those brand photos wasn't pride. It was pain. Because the same week Julia was folding cardboard boxes and packing her logo-stamped tissue paper, Simba was declining fast. Quiet at first, slower movements, trouble standing. But deep down, she knew. That kind of change isn't random. It's foreshadowing. She refused to accept it. Every hour that wasn't spent filming dog treat videos was spent watching Simba breathe. Checking his legs, calling the vet, moving him gently when he couldn't shift himself. She was tracking orders in the daytime and whispering, "Please don't go," into fur that smelled like heartbreak at night. Simba wasn't a brand mascot. He was the brand. He was the heartbeat of her house, her partner in healing. The sun she named on shows even when she was mocked for it. But as her audience grew, Simba's strength shrank. And Julia? She launched a business while grieving in real time. And Brandon? He helped with logistics, unboxed a few deliveries, posted proud boyfriend shoutouts, told his followers Julia was thriving. But never once, not once, did he publicly mention that Simba was nearing the end. Not even a vague, "he's not doing well." Not a single pause to say what was really behind that launch day sparkle. He separated the business from the breakdown. Supportive on paper, absent in pain. While she sobbed in their laundry room, sliding her back down the wall, shoulders shaking, trying not to ruin the promo samples with tears, he stayed product-focused. And then it got worse. Julia had a travel commitment for the launch. 2 days, a quick flight and back. She hesitated right up until boarding. Brandon said, "It's fine. I'll take care of him." Her gut said, "Don't go." But she went. Simba died the next day. Brandon didn't FaceTime. He didn't text a warning. He made a choice and called only after it was over. Simba's gone. That was the sentence. Nothing before it. No moment of softness. No pause to ask if she was sitting. No space to cry with her. Or for her. Julia stood in a rented workspace, phone pressed to her cheek, surrounded by stacks of branded boxes she no longer wanted to touch. Her hands didn't move. Her breath barely did. The launch had gone viral. But her child, the one creature who truly chose her, had left, quietly, in someone else's arms, alone. You think she stopped posting about Brandon for drama? She was screaming in code, and no one heard her. The posts that followed were strange, even for seasoned fans. One said, "You can succeed and grieve in the same hour." Another simply read, "Don't confuse silence with peace." She didn't mention Simba by name again for weeks. She didn't post Brandon's face. Not in celebration, not in mourning, not even by accident. He disappeared from her narrative the same way he disappeared in those final hours of Simba's life. Still there physically, but emotionally distant. Checked into the launch, checked out of the loss. He shared promo wins, milestones, dog treat reviews. Never acknowledged publicly the grief that laced every customer thank you card Julia signed while still wiping tears off her shirt. And fans? Some celebrated her strength. Others called her cold. A few defended Brandon, saying maybe he was grieving differently. Maybe he was trying to stay strong for her. But the receipts said otherwise. Julia's launch photos shifted fast. Smiles tightened. Branding brightened, but her captions dulled. She pinned one comment that read, "Your eyes look tired." Not physically, emotionally. She liked it, then logged off. What fans didn't realize was that the launch wasn't her comeback. It was her final mask, because Simba died during Julia's proudest public moment. And when she turned to look for comfort, all she found was product talk and promo codes. Congratulations and condolences don't fit in the same post. And what Brandon said next, after all of this, tells you exactly how fragile that so-called support really was. She didn't post her seat number, her boarding pass, or even a travel day outfit. Julia just started uploading from Serbia. Soft kitchen lighting, her father's shoulder in the corner of a photo, her mother laughing near a teacup. Dishes that matched no aesthetic, captions that didn't try to impress anyone. And yet, those pictures hit harder than all of her farm content combined. Not because of what was in them, but because of what wasn't. No Brandon. No tags. No rings. No miss you, babe. No back soon. No signs of a partner at all. She wasn't traveling. She was moving. And the people who'd been reading her captions like subtitles finally noticed this wasn't a peace trip. It was an exit strategy. Julia didn't vacation to Serbia. She went home. But her body language said even more. She wasn't tense, performative, overposed like she had been during the TLC years. She wore oversized sweaters, hair undone, zero effort to polish the frame. It felt real. Honestly, almost too real for some fans to accept. Because what do you do with a woman who looks lighter after stepping away from the man she was supposedly healing with? The smile was there, but it didn't come with quotations or hashtags. It wasn't curated. It was quiet, uneven, and absolutely unperformative. And yet, some followers still clung to hope. Sometimes, people just need space. Maybe she's grieving in her own way. She'll be back. But then came the pinned comment. Not dramatic, not aggressive, just observant. This doesn't feel like healing. This feels like grief finding clarity. Julia didn't reply. She didn't delete it either. She pinned it. The silence wasn't mystery anymore. It was confirmation. Because Julia had done the one thing Brandon never saw coming. She stopped defending the version of herself the show sold everyone. The storyline where she was dramatic, impulsive, difficult to reason with. She stopped fighting against it and disappeared from it instead. And if you thought silent breakups don't leave scars, wait until you hear what really happened after the cameras called her back. In Serbia, Julia didn't just look different. She sounded different. Her Russian got sharper, richer. She wasn't translating her thoughts anymore. She was thinking in her first language again. Her rhythm changed. Her captions turned reflective, poetic, oddly intimate. Today I didn't need to explain myself once. I remembered my old laugh. I had forgotten how it sounded. And once again, no Brandon, no we, no nostalgia for Virginia, the farm, or the life she built there. Only Nala was mentioned, her surviving dog. But even those captions felt careful, like she didn't want fans to think a new pet or a new chapter meant new healing. One photo showed her holding Nala's face, forehead to forehead, eyes closed. Caption: I'm still hers. Not we're still a family, not holding space, still hers. Some fans thought she'd soft launch a separation in the next season. That TLC would roll out a special with a title card: Julia and Brandon have decided to take time apart. A public grant of privacy. But what if the separation didn't need a press release? What if it already happened? Because what Julia posted wasn't separation content. It was life after. It was weeks of no Brandon, no farm, no pastel filters. And then came the callback fans didn't expect. A story post. Soft, blurry. Simba's collar on a dusty shelf. No caption. No emoji. No context. Thousands viewed it. Few understood what it meant. Julia wasn't posting in memory of Simba. She was posting the last piece of someone she was finally mourning properly. Not just Simba, but the version of herself that died with him in silence, surrounded by people who didn't understand what he really was to her. Because Simba wasn't a dog, he was her mirror, the only thing in that house that saw her fully. When he died, so did her bandwidth for performance, for curated healing, for partnerships that require silent self-erasure. And when Brandon didn't warn her, when he didn't hand her a last goodbye, he didn't just take away her stability. He took away her permission to keep living like she would ever be understood in that house again. And so Julia left, quiet, clean, no statement, no scandal. She left like someone who finally realized healing isn't something you do alongside the person who didn't show up when the pain hit hardest. It's something you do alone, away from the sets, away from the fans, away from the emotionally spreadsheeted responses to your deepest ache. This wasn't a pause. It was the final breath before freedom. So when TLC comes knocking again, with cameras in hand, hoping for a reunion or revelation, don't be surprised if Julia doesn't step back into the story. Or if she does, it won't be his story this time. Because Julia's biggest heartbreak wasn't Simba dying, it was realizing who let it happen. And more importantly, who didn't let her say goodbye. If you thought that hurt, wait until you see what happened when producers asked her to come back on camera. Because the red flags weren't done waving yet. Next video? You're not ready for this reunion.